Finding your way to the 0% tax bracket. There's been lots of conversation recently, it was just tax time, saying, how do I find myself in a lower tax bracket? Or how do I get to a 0% tax bracket? And unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, in today's world, there isn't a 0% tax bracket. But with standard deductions, it's possible for you to pay 0% in tax. The problem is that the standard deduction rate is relatively low. So you don't want to be making less than the standard deduction number so that you can end up with a 0% tax bracket. But if you plan strategically now, you can find yourself in the 0% tax bracket when you get to retirement. See, there's 3 different tax buckets that you need to understand. There's taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. Taxable buckets are things that most people are familiar with, like the stock market, mutual funds, CDs. These are things where you put your money in, you've already paid the tax on it, it grows, tax deferred, but then when you go to take the money out, there's small taxable gains that you still have to pay tax on. Ultimately, you're paying tax on that money twice, but because most of the growth can be found in investment vehicles like the stock market, people believe that it's worth the risk of the taxes. The second bucket is tax deferred, and those are assets like your 401k, IRA, anything where you put the money in today, no taxes are paid on that money. It grows completely tax deferred, no taxes are paid, but when you take the money out, it is taxable at 100% of whatever the tax brackets are at that time. Now, that's not a problem, say if you were in the 80s and 90s and you were deferring your taxes. At that point, tax brackets were in the 50s and 60s. So if you deferred and are taking your taxes now, taxes are in the 20s and 30s. So it was a great strategy that worked very well. But today, if you're deferring taxes in the 20s and 30s, you don't know where taxes are going to be in the future. So it could raise your taxes in the future as opposed to just taking care of them now. But it's a good bucket, and we're going to talk about why you need it in a minute. We've got to cover the third bucket, and that's the tax-free bucket. And when we talk about tax-free, we talk about tax-free in the future. That money you actually pay the tax on now. But you pay on the seed, and then ultimately, all of that growth is tax deferred. You don't pay any tax on it. And when you take the money out, it's 100% tax free, so you will not be taxed again. Those types of assets are the Roth IRA and cash value life insurance. Now, I know my idea when we started this conversation was to get you to the 0% tax bracket. So the way that you do that is through strategic distribution of assets. See, in every tax bracket in history, there's been some version of standard deduction. And that means that based on where your income level are, the government gives us a flat number that you get to deduct. So if you make $50,000 and the standard deduction is $20,000, of the 50, 20 comes off the top and you pay tax on the remaining 30. Well, the objective with the 0% tax bracket is to make sure that when you get to retirement and you're taking distributions from your tax deferred buckets, that 401k, IRA, etc., you're only taking the amount out of that tax deferred bucket that falls within the standard deduction. So given my 50,000 scenario, you take 20,000 of income from your IRA and you have a $30,000 gap. Well, the $30,000 we're going to take from the tax-free buckets, the Roth IRA and the cash value life insurance. So now of your 50, 20,000 comes from the IRA, but you get to deduct that because of standard deductions. And 30,000 comes from, let's call it cash value life insurance, which is tax-free, so you don't have any tax on that. And now your 50,000 is 100% tax-free. Side note, given this scenario, If $20,000 came out of your IRA, your Social Security would also be tax-free because you haven't gone over the Social Security limit of when your income becomes taxable. Now, Social Security was never designed to be a taxable asset, but as the population continued to pull on that Social Security and the drag happened, they've changed the rules around Social Security. And so now 85% of your Social Security is subject to taxes based on your income level. But with your way to zero tax bracket, you can reduce your income so that not only is your Social Security tax-free, but all of the income that you take in retirement can also be taxed at zero. Listen, this is not the end of the clever ways that we want to help you pay as little tax as legally possible. If you want to find out what your retirement tax burden could look like, and if it's possible for you to find your way to zero, click on the link below. We'd love to help.